The musical selections that we have on the program, those are random. I was telling Jeremy Daly that in the last half hour of the show, and I actually, the randomness is actually credit to a friend of mine by the name of Phil Plack. I was working at a radio station, and I said, Phil, I need music that has 60-second instrumental opens, because one of the rules in radio is, I should point out, frequently violated by the very successful George Noory, is don't play music with lyrics that you talk over. And I guess if George Noory has been successful and still does it, it probably is one of those rules that make you scratch your head and say, all right, why is that the rule in radio? But that's the going rule, is that don't talk over instrumental, or you talk over instrumental but not over lyrics. So Phil came up with this because he's got a music mind. And he came up with a stack of CDs for me with 60-second song intros, which I just then converted to MP3s and we loaded into a system. But they do play absolutely at random on the air with us. It's 37. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. I have a couple of new messages, in fact, to share with you today, but they're from some of the regular friends we have with us on this program who join us on a daily basis. In fact, we have a couple of folks who've had some changes in business locations. I've been telling you about Tint Lady now for about a year on the program, and the advantages of getting window tints for your home, your office, your automobile. First of all, it can help with fading. Second of all, on a really hot day, it keeps the heat down inside any of those structures, and they'll do a free estimate. All you have to do is give them a call at 736-8469. or go online at tintladyidaho.com, a locally owned and operated business, about a quarter century now in business, in fact, and the hours Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., as well as Saturday by appointment only, closed on Sundays, and I've been telling you, don't squint, get tint. But the address for the business has actually changed. This might be a good sign. Sometimes when you need to go to a new building, that is a sign that obviously things are growing, and I believe in my paperwork here, I was sent this by a representative, that they have a new address, 127 Filer Avenue on the corner of Washington and Filer. 127 Filer Avenue, corner of Washington and Filer. Easy place to get to. Sees a lot of traffic during the course of the day, and that's the new location for Tint Lady. So please drop in and say hello, too, as well. It'd be great for them to meet some of you. 927, Bill Colley with you, 736-0300. 736-0300. This is Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. I have a caller with us. Don't know what the topic is, but caller, you're on the air.
Good morning, Bill. Bill, I love people with a good sense of humor. And if we've seen Hillary barking like a dog, I have a request for a song since she made all that money in speeches. How much is that doggy in the window?
Or either this. Yes, that is the former Secretary of State. Thank you for the call. What a great setup that was. And I didn't even have to ask him to do it. Yes, one time First Lady of the United States, Secretary of State, member of the U.S. Senate. Can you imagine how many times this is going to, if she is the eventual nominee, next October, when you turn on your television or your radio or even see some of these political ads over the internet, which has become a big place for advertising, how many times you will actually, this is her Howard Dean moment. I am not making this up. That is candidate Hillary Clinton, who also, after a meeting with Al Sharpton, if you have not yet heard this, after a meeting with the Reverend Sharpton, he had a meeting last week with Bernie Sanders, she used a phony black accent. I kid you not. This is from the Daily Caller. Hillary Clinton appeared to mimic Reverend Al Sharpton's accent on Tuesday while standing right next to the civil rights activist. My lips are sealed, Clinton said in an affected accent after an event at the Harlem headquarters of Sharpton National Network. But she said it as, my lips are sealed. I was waiting for Sharpton to say, well, you know there, Sapphire, Kingfish and I got some plans that I want to hear you all box like my dog. You would think that if she had been a Republican that there might be an issue with all of that, but because she's a fellow traveler, Media says it's not racist. No, not at all. You're up next. You're on the air with Bill Colley on Top Story.
Yes, yesterday I called Mitch McConnell's office just to kind of start hammering away at him in case, he buckles, which he's,
Washington Times hints today that he may.
Well, and I called in and I got the switchboard, and they kicked me over to his office, and they says we're experiencing a heavy volume of calls. We can't take your call today. Go to our website. And a lot of times, because I call in frequently to whoever it is, because even if it's just therapy for me, you feel better. But and I will, in some cases, leave a message, and you get to tell them how you feel, whether or not it was Boehner, McConnell, and yesterday there was no doing so. So that was a good thing. And now one more quick thing.
Yeah, I got about 15 seconds. Go ahead.
Well, in case we have Trump, Sanders, and then if Bloomberg decides to run, is it going to be a disaster? And I'll hang up.
Yes. Simple and short and sweet answer to that. Yes, it will be. 9:30. Bill Colley with you on Top Story 38. Hey, it's already a disaster. That's why we have them in the first place. We've got more on the Supreme Court on the way. I just looked a moment ago at the TV monitor. We have it on in the background here. And there was a movie trailer. It's a movie featuring Liam Neeson, the Irish actor turned American, who does accents. You would never know this. He played a sheriff in a Steve Martin movie, a Southern sheriff, and I didn't know who he was at the time. I assumed he was a Southern actor, and then started seeing him in other film roles and realized he's Irish. But he's good at that accent thing. But he is one of the biggest gun control nuts in the country, and yet in all of his movies, all he does is shoot people. Figure that one out. 9:34. Bill Colley on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. Speaking of our upcoming better weather, I was mentioning Tint Lady just a few minutes ago, but we realize, of course, that we're going to see some temperatures, hit and miss over the next week or two, but temperatures bouncing into the 50s and some days perhaps close to 60. Not every day, but key signs that the weather is getting warmer and people might be considering doing something around the house to take advantage of that weather, such as perhaps a sunroom. Dream Room Design can build you a sunroom. Enjoy your deck or patio with no bees, mosquitoes, wind, dust, and blowing rain and snow. Provides usable space year-round. Operable windows with screens create a flow of air when you want it and you need it, and you can close to protect those windows or close those windows to protect you from the outside elements. Each room designed and engineered for your specific conditions. Dream Room Design specializes in building sunrooms, patio enclosures with many different styles to choose from. They can have glass or solid roofs or a combination of both. You can even enclose an existing covered deck or patio, converting it into a beautiful enclosed sunroom. And remember, I want you to do this. Go to the web, and you can check them out. This is, of course, a business that has been in operation now for close to 20 years in the area. But you've got to check them out on the web to see all of the great things they've got there at dreamroomdesign.com. Bill Colley with you on Top Story this morning on News Radio 1310 KLIX, newsradio1310.com, coming up on 9:36, 37 right now. Supreme Court of the United States. Will it help if you make a telephone call to Washington and tell these people to hold the line when it comes to standing up against Barack Obama, nominating one of his fellow traveling Marxist-Leninists for the Supreme Court? Well, it just may. I'll tell you why I think that. I told you yesterday about a story that appeared in the Wall Street Journal. Oh, no, day before yesterday. A story appeared in the Wall Street Journal in Saturday's edition. And it was a story about refugee resettlement here in Idaho. And they quoted Representative Stephen Hartkin as well as Governor Otter. And Governor Otter says, my office has been inundated. That means overwhelmed with the phone calls from people who are concerned about the refugee resettlement program, which led the governor and many in the legislature to question the program and possibly a moratorium, which does not yet exist, but they're pushing back against it. So when you say government never answers my needs, there you go. They were impressed by the volume of telephone calls at the governor's office and among your state legislators. Will it happen in Washington? We'll have to see. This is from the Washington Times today. Dave Boyer, Stephen Dine and the writers. President Obama called on Senate Republicans Tuesday to give his eventual Supreme Court nominee a fair hearing. Sure, go ahead. We'll give him a hearing. We just want to prove that. To replace the late Justice Antonin Scalia as cracks emerged in the Republican leadership's position. Oh, come now. I expect them to hold hearings. I expect them to hold a vote, Mr. Obama said at a press conference. There's no unwritten law that says it can only be done on off years. Well, there's no written law that says they have to have a vote. The Constitution says, Grant Loebs brought it up yesterday, Article 2, Section 2. President can come up with any name he wants to submit. There's no requirement that members of the Senate take it to the floor anytime soon. There's no time limit. And they're not, according to the Constitution, they're not required just to rubber stamp the president's choice. The writers say even before Mr. Obama stated his case, there were signs that Republican unity was wavering on the notion of blocking any nominee out of hand. Senate Judiciary Committee Chair Chuck Grassley, Iowa Republican, didn't rule out confirmation hearings and a vote by his panel on an Obama selection. Well, there you go. And Mitch McConnell and his mail-order bride, Mitch McConnell, the chinless wonder, so often has said, this is what we're going to do. Well, okay, hold on a minute. He draws the line in the sand and says, don't cross this line. Well, all right. And then he backs up a couple of feet and draws another line. Well, don't cross that line. I told you not to cross that line. All right. He backs up a couple more feet and draws another line. Don't cross that line. He's a squish. We know that. But perhaps the telephone calls. I'll tell you, I was never so unnerved. There was an issue a few years ago, and I called up John Boehner's office because I'd read in the morning newspapers that Boehner was going to be holding the line against pressure to end a government shutdown. That was it. And I called up his office, and I said, I'm really proud of what the speaker's doing right now. I had to admit, I'm not often proud of what Speaker Boehner does. And the woman on the line, oh, thank you so much. We'll be sure to pass that along. I got off the telephone. It was about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. About 3 o'clock in the afternoon, he caved, which is why he's no longer Speaker of the House. So Mr. McConnell, the majority wimp, over in the U.S. Senate, might be looking over his shoulder, at least at that count, and saying, you know what? I made my promise. Maybe I should keep one for a change. 20 minutes away from 10 o'clock, 37. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX at newsradio1310.com. Your thoughts on this situation coming up in just a few minutes, right here on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com.